Hi, everyone. Welcome to Segue. I'm Stella, and this is the last event in our current series, curated by myself and Jay Sanders. I am especially pleased we will end on a very high note today with readings by two poets, James Sherry and Mei-Mei Berssenbrugge, both of whom are intimately involved with the history of this series. I will start by introducing James Sherry. After he reads, we'll take a short intermission, and then my colleague Nushin Gaimi will introduce Mei-Mei, and we'll hear from her. James Sherry has produced 14 books of poetry and prose, most of which are represented in his recent book of collected works, Coming Round, available here today, which was released in 2023. Originally published in small chapbooks, the poems are sequenced here in this book chronologically, beginning with his earliest suite, Lazy Sonnets, written between 1970 and 72. As one of the originators of language poetry, Sherry has embraced the materiality of words, organized in an endless variety of ways. Especially unique to his poetry is the habit of juxtaposing more standard prose, one that considers materialist questions grounded in history, with more abstract and at times lyrical lines, which syntactically put those ideas into practice. For instance, in popular fiction, written in the early 80s, he ruminates on the idea of nothing. He writes, "Nothing is derived from nothing." Although translators of Hindu and Buddhist literature have more often found nothing to be a prefix of ness, in colloquial terms, nothing is what one has plenty of. On the opposite page, in a poem titled Disinterment, Sherry demonstrates the transmutational process of becoming nothing through the deconstruction of language, a process also gestured at in the poem's title. Throughout its lines, nothing itself is rendered semantically through the excessive attachment of prefixes like un, re, and de. For example, he writes, unregenerate, re-degressivity, unlistening, hand, descension from wrist. Alongside his poetry, Sherry has published important works of historical criticism, wherein he proposes models for better understanding the systems that organize our world through the level of sentence structure. In his 2016 book, Oligarchy, also available here today, he wittily rewrites Machiavelli's classic The Prince to tell an age-old but ever-relevant story of power and its misuses. In it, he offers a blueprint for the modern-day oligarch by revealing an interconnected history of the successful or not successful methods employed by a small group of actors to consolidate wealth. His purview is broad, drawing links between the present-day US, Soviet Russia, and a post-9/11 Iraq. In many ways, Sherry's text perfectly encapsulates the ills and ire of this precise moment as we bear witness to the accumulation of unprecedented wealth. In fact, the book includes a prologue addressed to Elon Musk, wherein Sherry humbly offers him the text as a gift. Sherry's text retentively demonstrates that none of this is new, even in the free world that champions democracy. He continues to investigate systems in his 2022 book titled Selfie, Poetry, Social Change, and Ecological Connection, wherein he proposes an environmental model of poetry that he writes can contribute to an apparatus of change for rethinking oneself, social relations, and living interactions with one's surrounding. He argues that because language writing inherently makes use of alternative structures, new ideas can arise from these divergent patterns of thinking, which can then provide clues for saving our endangered ecological habitat. Amazingly, while Sherry draws on an encyclopedic breadth of historical information to develop these models, he manages to keep their interpretations and potential uses completely open-ended. I couldn't end without mentioning that Sherry is the reason why we are all here gathered today. In 1976, he founded the Segue Foundation, which supports the Segue reading series and Roof books, And since then, Sherry and countless guest curators have hosted over 10,000 poetry events in New York City. We have been honored to support James's lifelong devotion to poetry and writing by hosting the series at Artist Space since 2020. And the endurance of this community, evident in the series' near unchanged format, is a testament to just how critical it is to maintain discourse about writing grounded in live exchange. In addition to the series, Sherry has published nearly 200 titles of poetry and criticism since 1979 through Roof Books, including many foundational texts to the language school. We are absolutely thrilled to have James Sherry here in the role of reader today. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming him.
How's that, Madeline? A little louder? So I'm afraid that my voice is not in great shape today, but I think Madeline can adjust the sound so that you can all hear me. So the reason I asked for this reading was I wanted everyone to know about this book, Comin' Round, which is selected over 50 years of work. And the title actually was suggested by Charles Bernstein from the poem that you'll see that I read in a little while of the same title. So in the early 70s, as Sella said, I wrote a bunch of quasi-sonnets called lazy sonnets under the impression that I could just sleep and everything would be fine. Unfortunately, you find out later that that's not the case, but this first one is called Idle. Maybe I don't understand my own mind, but when I try to find some reasons why I'm always dozing, thoughts flock around, eager to be the one I choose, so I can't. If I do pick one, the others intrude. If I catch one by the neck, it babbles to be returned. And if by inertia or impetus beyond control, I'm carried beyond them, to where I know their names, I can't think. I don't know how I got here. I don't remember really what happened. It's as if I slept and dreamed I'd know why I slept when I woke up. The second one is called Platonic Laziness. Face in pillow, at verge of day, perfectly restrained, I hear the buses. They do not make me nervous. I obey another urge than rushing to the office. I have but one ambition, repose. Suspending animation is my quest. Let's say I'm lazy. Let me yawn, stretch, doze, but not get up, not sleep deep in my nest. My face is crushed flat and flushed, and my lips nurse. As I approach ideal languorousness, my random thoughts recline along this verse. But I can't mail MS to your address, since even model laziness has a hitch. Although I ache and itch, I must not budge. And then the third one, last one from this group I'm going to read is called Sloth. My sloth is two-toed and hangs upside down, diverting boredom with this novelty or crawling to maintain my camouflage to a certain finish, gumming my greens. I can ignore all but the basic necessities, breathing, eating, sleeping. My well-oiled joints ease me up the tree. Thumbs, fire, wheels, writing, iron are conveniences from my point of view. I like big soft leaves, papaya, jungly atmosphere, mango, tango, poolside drinks. Why push upward, pressing fragile principle? All must succumb. Head, shoulders, rubber double over. What strength we need to stand erect and flex. The next poem I'm going to read is from a different section. This is from a book called Part Songs, where I sat in a lot of musical concerts and just wrote notes as the players were playing. But sometimes I did pieces that were related to popular music, so this is called She'll Be Comin' Round. She'll be comin' round the mountain when the shell sometimes is empty. She'll be comin' sometimes and the shell is an evasion when she comes around the mountain to put in an appearance. And this is the introduction we're all trying to come round to. She'll be driving 6 white and well-bred young mares. She'll be trying to be comin' when one of the horses slips on a curve, but the traces hold her up like a beautiful horse about to describe the great vehicle she'll conduct when she comes. And we'll all go out to meet her when the well is dry and cracked and the water too neutral to hold even a chance encounter, when we're trying to be comin' and breathe too much, or that's what I heard when trying too hard to meet her when she comes. And we'll all have chicken and dumplings in a context of the human shell, water in the trough, the gopher holes, how hot leather is in the desert mining town, except to the horses when she comes. Now I'm going to divert for a while to some new pieces that aren't published yet. These are short pieces mostly involved with environmental subjects, which has been my interest for the last few years, actually 30. First is called Oubliette in a Contingent World. Carve a seam in the stone that fell to stop you correcting me with chestnuts in the first person plural to tune up your gist. Your motive, it seemed, to avoid rural cruelty using today's logic on past events, as if they were not justified then. Now each moment has its own meaning and hands full of loot nearby to scoop up ongoing misery. I don't value art by liking it or beauty by linking nature to freedom. I focus on us, can't stop with myself if you are to read. The purpose of writing about ecology avoids reasoning only from me, including many and other links. Sure, you are exemplary, and mostly I think in first person singular, avoiding other numbers till want wells up and I reach out in critical demand. Those free of need are full of tricks. Next one is a short one called Quest for Rapture. Seeking entrances and exits, free from interference, but with care for the passage, as if where the sun shines separates us from the play of chat and questions that date from the start of events, that divert from digression when you don't like your own conclusions. This is called Weather Report, Chance of Goals. Silly faceless blossoms drop to the ground underfoot, as if poets need good behavior, as if ecstasy could operate without reason, at either side as neither wing supports itself. Breathe in our nest of wildfires, because it's May Day and I'm going AI, corrupting capital tomorrow. You posit your career as a school of red herrings to tempt us from our own interest. None of these paper fish brings me to my goals, to home without wrong, to presence continually wanting, to constraint as the inevitable but vilified condition of poetry. Civil, military. From the empire's core, from the moment when boundaries all fail from climate's ministrations, appeals to wisdom's overflowing with excess life. Denying does not dilute its symptoms, not heat, not broken value, not the corpse-shaped ash. Climate catastrophe will be a gesture of the earth at the moment of sloughing off another excess, another template, simulating rules and rulers in speech called human, in another frame partial, but let's not say wasted construction, of competition from terrorist trees that take up my space, and the microbiome, those agents of nutrition, of the narcissism of engineers and poets at the phalanges of alarms, ticking down people think are about them, when it's not identity, but acts, a shorthand for classifying an instant in an instant, planetary judgment long deferred by human ambition to truncate lengthening time. The gardener prunes strict metrics that are simply earthly. Speech slows down thought and practice at once, and wouldn't manufacture similarity to make self seem one italic gate to another world we'd wish. Rent intuition. Grackles in a bramble sizzle with the sentiment of neige d'antin, that mawkish mocha hour of bees those days when doting on people for their rage, the world tree narrative, climbs one moment to the next where words wend toward borrowing. Shopping with a qualified buddy. I promise to die in the wallpaper, rearranging the words as I'd like. You have to make your own people, though, because others are unbearable in their exclusion, doting on legacy and prickly regulation that they reproduce in their lust to punish your commas, one of your young bucks running silkily through the mall. Critique of the critique. The lawns we hate are grass, the core of civilized life. Wheat, millet, rice, barley, corn build surplus to thrive, specializing in poetry to exist with their signs like the lawn's mirrored globe. And the last one from this series is for Mei-Mei, called Cicada and Meadowlark Calls. Skies tell the story with math and empathy, where place accommodated becoming, and space says renews the links with minerals of your eyes, and the poor benefit for once, like a chord collects arpeggios, the foremost activists against neglect, your infinite absence sequestered in doorways, eyeing the interior of a cornea, arrow lit by seduction's vapor with protracted liability, halting cute heat from compression, or do I mean compassion, concluding with anomaly, like a poem mocking relations between poems. So with all of the political writing that I've done, I thought this was the time to trot it out. I'm going to do two things one from Our Nuclear Heritage and one from the Oligarch. The first piece is from Our Nuclear Heritage. It's called Nuke Man. And it's long, so I'm just going to read sections of it, and it's conveniently broken up in sections. And I'm reading this in honor of Signalgate. And this book, Nuke Man short book, is based on a writing manual from Wen Fu from 300 CE. I have to say CE. And so you'll hear echoes of the writing issue while we're talking about bombing. First section is called About Face. Studying to attack the enemy, how their minds work. Self-serving propaganda and shows of force are effects which can be variously achieved. And certainly we should look good to be thought well of. But the accessible arsenal and mobile strike team can be distinguished from even rows of missiles in a parade and hollow displays of technology. Rigorous training, war games corrections, and revising strategy and tactics spark the inside to curtail defective force. Nuke Man introduces active considerations to the models of Our Nuclear Heritage, tracing the confluences of war and art. When fighting to making a living at the expense of others, different disciplines branch directly from our duties. I have found multiple solutions to a puzzle expected to have one answer. Each soldier seeks a new conquest. First foray. Daydreams. He hears an inner taps. His stealth bombers ride currents in the four corners of his mind as his mind over the horizon surveys. And then intelligence clarifies bogies, and missiles pour forth the shape of death, issuing particulate bitterness. He drifts in a lake of reports, He drives to the depths of weather radar through drifting clouds of gases. And he scoops living beings like fishes hooked in their gills into his net of survivors. And he brings down order like a duck. The buckshot bounced off, but then it rises again. And he gathers words and images from anonymous hacked generations. His rhetoric comes from Georgic's millennial past. And morning does not come, for here is history known by no one. Only light unfolds. Past and present salute. The earth was the blink of an eye. Correcting errors. Looking back, one finds errors of judgment, moral oversights, and crime. Anticipating adverse publicity, one seeks a smooth transition that will not compromise the leaders or the people. Distinguishing action from result, errors in judgment can be compensated, oversights can be covered up, and crimes can be punished or privately banked. Confuse them, and everyone suffers because the foundation of patriotism, cause and effect, is questioned. The general inspects his soldiers down to a single hair. When corrections are precise, even politics can frankly control the people. The terror. I worry my victories have been misrepresented. Start again. The terror. I wonder my victories have been misrepresented. And another has seized the strategic objective. Unworthy to lead modern vessels of power, I want to initiate the long march. I work with materials at hand. That which is over cannot be delayed. And then the enemy shot 6 times rises. The need for a particular action passes, but its effects return as useful as an echo from Thermopylae. When spring arrives, the troops' blood stirs, and public information encourages emotion. Yesterday, teamwork. Today, standardization. Every eye sees the pattern, and it don't take Alexander to hear the music. 2 more of these. This next one is called inspiration. Time comes when the armor is mired, though every order wants to be obeyed, when the individual initiatives fail. The campaigner feels dry as last year's pop star's facelift, dead as last year's pop star, as culture that feeds on nostalgia. Wishing on his venture, he searches his self for a dream. He relies on circumstance or the weather to change. He scans the horizon for a convenient opponent. The real victory is in the dark, strategies brought gently like a child from the womb, terrified and screaming. Forcing actions forces errors. Letting time take its course makes the course clear. Victory lies in individuals acting in common cause on multiple fronts, but no power on earth guarantees alliances. Again and again, I search my heart in the struggle. Sometimes another theater appears when I least expect. An empire keeps the lasting peace. And the last section of this piece is armistice. Consider the use of force civilization requires. Although all cultures want to rise above it, as if the fetus could have no placenta, they have not understood its limits. The work of the mighty crumble, that mighty crumble is obviously a quote, but when I see it together, it reminds me of my breakfast cereal. The works of the mighty crumble, yet continue to be the goal of many in the sonnet of laughter and peace and the sorrows of war. Each generation is fathered by the military of the prior. Only isolated tribes have no apparent pecking order. The discipline of war makes leaders for peace and illuminates moral questions. War is like art because it must deal with calibrated spaces and the conflicts of partisans. War comes like lightning from the sky and claws the spirit. Inscribed on bronze and marble, it is honored as virtue, but every day must be today, and we must live on in our memories. So then I'll close the reading with the letter to Elon Musk that Stella mentioned from the oligarch. And this was written, by the way, in 2016-17, at the beginning of the first Trump administration, when we all thought these guys were dark, shadowy figures. But now we see their attack on civil society, law, education, art, all of which are now being reworked in the Trumpian image. And it's up to us here to do something about it. But here I was very happy to write a letter to the excellent Elon Musk. Anyone who hopes to gain the favor of an oligarch offers what they think influential people enjoy. Supplicants present ostentatious building plans, brilliant patent filings, and expensive gifts such as cars, paintings, and baseball cards. Although lacking the capital for such a princely offering, I am keen to bestow some proof of my appreciation. Thus, I present this treatise on the networks of power that I have written after years of studying technology, finance, environment, and language. These reflections, channeled through a work of great antiquity and importance, Niccolò Machiavelli's The Prince, reminds us of the timeliness and timelessness of the subject of leadership by small groups. Some of the perspectives herein may contradict conventional wisdom, but I ask you to keep an open mind. Though I consider this book barely worth your attention, I trust that you will be kind enough to accept it. The best gift I can offer is the opportunity to understand in the shortest time what I have learned through years of anguish and compromise, weathering the ubiquitous clamor and assault of disinformation. Productive and effective people consider their relationship from many points of view and do not act on essential truths. Filmmakers photograph mountains from the plains, and in order to screen the plains, shoot from the peaks. There is no privileged position of comprehension. Diverse evidence must be correlated. Take then this little gift in the spirit that I offer it. If you consider it, it will become apparent how to reach prominence promised by your skill, focus, and good fortune. And if, Elon, from your mountaintop you sometimes turn your eyes toward these lower regions, you will see how much your work means to the world. Yours truly. Thank you all.
Thank you, James. We're going to take like a 3-minute intermission, and then we'll be back with Mei-Mei. Thank you.
Les gens n'ont rien à faire, ils sont
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're going to start. Now we're going to listen to Mei-Mei read, and to introduce her, we have my colleague Nusheen Gaimi. So please welcome Nusheen.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. Mei-Mei Berssenbrugge is the author of 14 books of poetry. Writing since the 1970s, Berssenbrugge has participated in and been influenced by many pioneering artistic movements, including multiculturalism, language poetry, and the New York School of Poets. While often working in collaboration with her peers, Berssenbrugge's poetry is marked by her own rigorous reinvention of the formal possibilities of poetic language. She often writes using a personal voice, drawing the reader into her world by heightening her encounters and generously giving language to things that are often considered indescribable or imperceivable. Her two most recent books are Hello, the Roses from 2013 and A Treatise on Stars from 2020. Both books deal with the natural world, a prescient topic, and Berssenbrugge has an uncanny ability to describe both our earthly surroundings in Hello the Roses and the otherworldly forms above as in A Treatise on Stars. Her poems fuse abstract descriptions of color and light together with matter-of-fact scientific language, encapsulating the wholeness of human experience. Nature is carefully reflected and refracted back onto the reader on every level. Even the form of Berssenbrugge's long sentences mirror the horizon lines and arcs of the sun's rays outside her home in New Mexico, where she has lived since 1974. While New Mexico has been her primary home for the past 50 years, Berssenbrugge's life is one of constant movement. She was born in Beijing to a Chinese mother and Dutch-American father, but later moved to Massachusetts. Her understanding of language was fundamentally altered during her transition from Mandarin to English, and there's a symbiotic dialogue between Eastern and Western philosophies in her work. She has stated that my family is my essential life metaphor. Meanwhile, over the course of her adult life, Berssenbrugge has traveled back and forth between New Mexico and New York City, ingraining herself into artistic communities in both places and gleaning new connections. Her poetry reflects this transitory life by bringing together fractured elements of language and creating cyclical rather than linear relationships between subjects. Berssenbrugge often achieves this by obfuscating a clear narrator within her sentences, allowing readers to create new grammatical relationships between the poem's components. Emotions become agentive figures, space and time collapse into each other, and the essence of a human being is scattered across everything that they interact with, both living and non-living. Her poems can read like cryptic, meandering vignettes that have been pulled not out of thin air, but from a fog of pre-existing language. It is difficult to describe these poems without falling into paradoxes, which is perhaps their very intention. As Berssenbrugge once put it, I don't think understanding is that important. I think there are mysteries. Things can set other things in motion that can set yet other things in motion, without understanding. By dedicating herself to exploring the stories that exist within the fog, on the cusp between the spiritual and physical worlds, Berssenbrugge transforms even the most everyday interactions into bountiful moments of meditation. There is a radical wisdom relayed in this poetic practice that extends into every facet of our lives, that if we can fully grasp the potential of grace, compassion, and empathy, we can save us from ourselves. With that in mind, please welcome Mei-Mei Berssenbrugge.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, James, for that wonderful reading. Your molecular bonds are strong. I also want to say what an honor it is to read with James because of the lifelong dialogue of poetry that we have together. So after I wrote my book about the stars, A Treatise on Stars, I took up the subject of plants, and I thought, since most of you are poets, that I would read one finished poem that you may have heard before, but otherwise read work that I'm working on slowly. So I was looking for things to read, and I found a fragment I thought I would read. Whenever I write about Richard Tuttle lately, he has the persona of a gardener. He looks into the space between stars and sees it is made of light. He looks down at his paws, and they're made of stars, and the space between them is light. In that moment, jaguar, dark mirror, awakes in my dream of this green planet. He sees that light from deep space confirms love for who we are. He understands a bright field simultaneously reveals my own darkness. I look at the gardener sitting beside me. Between his hands are millions of stars. Trees make a canopy above rushing water, and sunlight filters like a prism into the stream. I reach for gold dancing in recesses and pull out flowing rays. With intention, seeing, I tune to a place like the space between leaves. And with attention, I feed energy to this place. Attention is my mind, like foliage. Phusis is in 4 parts. Phusis is the Greek word for nature, but in my mind, it also means growing. A path through the woods winds along a stream that flows into the ocean. I look up at new leaves on a branch overhead and follow it back through a thicket of laurels to a very old ash tree. Another world of tree spirit interweaves our path, emerging through fluid energies like sunlight. Portals can be found near such a tree on our land, and also in one's own interior. Expand your inner space toward the subjectivity of native plants by envisioning shared land. Earth encompasses physical nature and an ineffable vastness of intention, telluric impulse, vivacity. You are part of that consciousness now. You relate to inner space as a direct perception of this consciousness. For example, the ash tree is a receptive organ for the consciousness of Earth, capturing and transmitting light frequencies. The observer within, growth, Gaia, translates these frequencies into coherence, a matrix where every being connects to our sun, so the fractal, the whole, is more like a conduit. Perception of the ash tree drops into my awareness as gnosis, species, memory, prediction. Then light manifests as a mandala of all the living things. I did not know how beautiful we are. Now growing turns the plant, let's say dandelion, out toward her surroundings, toward the other light, with no return to her body from before. She becomes the physical expression of sun, rain, minerals around her, disclosing environment in the form of her being. Imagine a kind of discernment where thoughts circulate on plant surfaces, not in consciousness, and stay close to appearance. The telos of a stem is toward sunlight, and its materialization in a yellow flower, in which beauty is how she communicates to us. This way of conjoining with her milieu, forming a rhizome, with it a passage, is a matter of aptness, adjustment, and becoming in a dandelion. So plants exemplify subjective being. As constitutive relations with others, there is an intimate plasticity with place, which some call environment, but I call the beloved. Many spring flowers draw their yellow from the sun. The sacred geometry of dandelion expresses a celestial space of multi-dimensions like possibilities. When you extend in alignment with their pattern, your future becomes myriad, where the fractal, the intention, like plant thought, is non-conscious, dispersed, immanent, embodied. Thousands across the grass describe a matrix of energy we call imaginal cells. Between exhale and inhale, I receive downloads from this field of plenty where growth begins. Growing, the future in the present, occurs face to face with their environment. Everything connects through cause and effect or evolvement. Then evolvement is a dispersion, like feathery seeds into air, connecting time and place. So I continue to dream forward. With each new seed, leaf, bract repeating along a stem, the futural dimension pushes ajar. There's a somatic openness to others, to rain, sunlight, a kind of responsibility. The plant's telos is contingent on this alterity. It's sprouting, flourishing, flowering, dehiscence, withering away, and so forth. Humans conversely approach death with hectic strategies for living longer, as if we are unfulfilled. Higher than our last moment stands possibility. When I first saw Richard's garden, I was surprised it was unkempt. Weeds flourished beside roses and herbs with no apparent order. New intentions thrive in an overgrown garden. Imagining Eden connects intuition to the wild. So if your intention is to learn from plant spirits, offer them beautiful questions. They'll show you change beyond what you imagine. You wake into universal consciousness alongside dandelions, nettles, red clover in their collective unconscious of flux and growth. This tree of life symbolizes our agreement to be here as consciousness streaming into an individual ash tree and its species oversoul, the green woman on our path at dusk. We become a channel for plants to bring the impetus of spirit into healing. Then the way a wild rose overtakes his garden, the relation is medicine. Who we are unfolds through this experience of her essential goodness. I exchange defense for tenderness when plants give without reserve to every being. The rain I wish for, whether or not my prayer is acknowledged, begins to shapeshift my wish, and world is reinvented. The plant is no longer a simple object, mute and passive, but an enigmatic, fertile instance of the universal warp, wherein each prayer reflects the garden. May my prayer reflect with grace the bestowal of love unearned. Okay. Now we're going to new work. I think in the Midwest there's many groups of people and new philosophies about restoring prairies and woodlands. So this is a poem in 4 parts. It's called The New Forest. My sister and her husband are restoring woods on their family farm. She's part of a group who disrupt tired land to stimulate the regrowth of native plants. Farmers are creating enclaves of oak and pine, where weeds crowded out understories of violets, snowdrops, and ferns. Revitalizers hope small-scale interventions such as coppicing, hand-tilling, culling may draw people and forests out of decline toward new, overlapping lifeways. Why does digging up her old field evoke this sense of possibility? How have ecological relations between farmers and trees become the subject of anthropologists? Some volunteers are retirees. There are students from Madison, suburban families with young children, new citizens. One woman with an estate studies diversity. In spring, her hills are jeweled with dogwood, cherry, azalea. One group grows lady slippers under pines. Milestones of germination, blossoming, fruition mark intrinsic measures of being. Callings replace facts. People repeat stories they don't truly believe, sensing a power of divination in which living trees can connect with what has passed when they need to, and the dead connect to us. There is a feeling of being in one reality with the primeval forest. Consider trees we have lost, the piñons, our shore oaks, the ash tree. None of them is now who they once were in our life. They are vaster in the realm of what has passed, and the connection, the rhizome, is green. That is what every plant on earth is trying to tell us, however they can. I drive to their farm through a patchwork of second and third growth trees, empty fields, and rocky pastures. You can remove a forest more definitively from earth than from consciousness. Earth's consciousness and our own will use memory to create new Edens, but perhaps not with trees. Mind is our most complex process, most fractionalized. We can place the whole planet on a tiny screen, quanta entangling every atom of a future forest, superpose particles of memory with possibility. Spirit moves in harmony with this energy that lies deep in nature. It can represent her intention as purely as a fir seedling forms in my eye. So when stories of climate loss are told at lunch, I have a new curiosity about the depth of my sorrow. Even if the fir seedling does not survive, if a deer snips it, By clarifying my feelings without blame, I can work toward an emergent forest with this community of restorers, so pain is not from my own past. Vulnerability is my good intention, a hope of belonging by learning to be useful. Consider the leaves of a devil's club plant beneath old firs. I observe a round shape and slight indentations in lower leaves, serrate with branching veins. The next leaves are larger, oval, with deep lobes. Symmetry maintains in sepals, disclosing tiny white blossoms and red fruit in a series of steps like musical notes. I set my mind in corresponding growth. I move from my observations of specific leaf forms to the deeper realm of formative force. What was sequential in my experience becomes protean in memory. All growth rises from this source toward an implicit wholeness she calls morphogenesis, a plant's form. Another couple upstate plants 1 million seedlings in order to experience this force between forest and young volunteers. I start sensing alignments in our relations, like water in ground, spongy with seedlings and rotting plants, she tells me. She treats young trees more like a poet or anthropologist, as frames continually adjusting between what she sees and risk. My question is, how to frame a window within a window? That is the window I am within the window each tree will open on its own lifespan. Tiger lily blossoms at 5 a.m., the lady slipper at 7, and wood asters not until 9. These plants also fold their petals at certain times before night. Earth surrenders to the larger realm within, demonstrating an existential weaving between sunlight and plants. At night, the formative force or soul pours out across the galactic system. It draws from the cosmos with which it unifies energy to restore the day's efforts of bodies, and at dawn draws itself back. The person who camps in a dark forest feels hopeful as its soul moves across her environment toward the stars. What if this energy of a seed also sustains our birth, growing up, death, and rebirth, with no breaks, but continuous appearing the way plants continue the transitions of their identities? Situate this metamorphosis amid long weekends of manual labor in the young forest, as seasons come around with other fruits and seeds. Joy at restoring land helps me to transmute mourning for the impermanence of bliss in nature. I have to internalize what such bliss generates each dawn and recreate it. Then I'll read two little new untested parts of a poem called Summer Poem. In those days, wherever we went, there were leaves and branches between us and the sky. Pines grew thick on hillsides down to the bay, larches too, and oaks seemed more dense than the year before as we entered their dappled shade, boughs rising and falling like breath. We move from the day-bright world into a realm suffused with the ambience of their affinities, the call of a hermit thrush enhancing the physical. White pines partake of an immersive vernacular as they interweave with human and non-human communities in affective entanglement. Walking among them becomes a syntax. Step by step, I experience trees and days as an embodied multiverse in which intersection, transfer, emergence, increase, enigma are living entities. From across the bay, we could not experience lives as thus entwined. We would view this hillside as one sunlit expanse. Do not reduce the biome, our relational souls, into that gorgeous panorama. When forest and its inhabitants would reciprocate our regard. We set out on a warm day to look for mugwort. My sister will grind with fat into medicine. We choose a path in the hills and come upon two saplings I've never seen here before. She says they're smoke pines from southern forests in Tennessee and Georgia. I've dreamt of these trees. In my sleep, a mature smoke pine describes the creation of life. Can the generative energy of a dream manifest as trees? Yes. Can two saplings referring to this dream form a synchronicity with flowing space? These structuring embodiments restore meaning to our being here as they create identity between sleeper and environment. One proto-being passing through stopped to rest and became two trees here and left their image as evidence of the underlying unity in life. So I interpret the growth of immigrant pines in a northern valley as a startling botany of creator beings who also pass through dreams. I'm inspired by pistis, loyalty to the charged experience that home expresses itself narratively as a generative continuum with others. The spoke pine has helped me to trust a home that is more intimate than the one I fell asleep in. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mei-Mei. Thank you, James. Thank you, everyone, for coming and supporting Segue. Next week, our season is officially over, but next week is the first reading curated by Future Poem, and they're curating April and May, and we're going to have Marie Buck, Matthew Walker, and Simone White next Saturday. So please come.